Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Teresa. I do videos on whatever I want because I don't like putting myself in a box. And today I thought I would do a video dedicated to this month's Pride Month, which is Disability Pride Month. And a lot of you know that I have a disability myself. I have what's called a specific learning disability, which is dyscalculia. A lot of us have heard about dyslexia, which is seeing a word and getting the letters confused. Um, excuse me, I think I have a little bit of a cold right now. And so if you guys hear me talking, if I sound a little bit weird, that's why. So just pardon that. But a lot of us know about dyslexia, which is seeing a word, seeing the letters looking a little bit differently. A B, as in boy, might look like a P, as in puppy. And so dyscalculia is often referred to as like the sister disability to dyslexia, but they are not the same thing. So, what is dyscalculia? So, I'm going to read off of, I'm going to try and not say so much, but that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to learn. I'm going to read off of the Learning Disabilities Association of America website and probably play a little clip for you guys as well to better understand what exactly dyscalculia is. I'm so sorry, like I said, I'm a little bit sick, so I'm either sick or it's allergies. I'm just a little like all over the place right now. Bear with me in this video. So, dyscalculia is having to do with math calculations and difficulty understanding numbers and math facts. So, dyscalculia is associated with weaknesses in fundamental number representation and processing, which results in difficulties with quantifying sets without counting, nonverbal processes to complete simple numerical operations, and estimating relative magnitudes of sets. I don't really know what the first half of that sentence means, to be completely honest with you, but I know what that last sentence means. Estimating relative magnitudes of sets. So think about when you're a kid and they have those jars and you have to guess how many like rubber balls are in a jar. For somebody who has dyscalculia, because we do not have the ability to properly like estimate a number, that is like really hard for us. I absolutely hate it when I am in a situation and somebody tells me to like estimate a number. I remember literally not that long ago at my old job, I was talking to the like owner of the place and he told me to estimate like how much he made. Ooh, especially with money. Oh my god, that's like the worst thing for somebody with dyscalculia. I'll explain in a minute. But estimating how much he made as a senator, and I was like, oh my god, I don't know, because I feel like people, anytime I do it, people make fun of me for like, oh, you think I made that much doing this type of job? And I'm like, you told me to estimate. So, yeah, like we just have no like ability or whatever to really like, I don't know, like properly estimate a number. And then it's like when we do, people tend to like make fun of us in a way, or at least that's been my experience. Especially when it comes to like job related stuff of like, guess how much I made in this position. And especially, I think for me, having a degree in business administration, they're like, oh, well, you should know how much this job makes. And it's like, No, really, I don't know at all, especially like I just moved from North Dakota to Montana. Like, I don't know what businesses are paying here when in North Dakota. Like, it's completely different. Sorry, guys, I'm shaking the camera. I'm trying to make sure, like, this is even and stuff. But yeah, so that's basically what that means when it says estimating relative magnitudes of sets. So I can explain that part at least a little bit better. Dyscalculia is also a cognitive disability. And so cognitive disabilities affects a person's ability to think, learn, remember, solve problems, and communicate effectively. So again, it affects a person's ability to think, to learn, to remember, to solve a problem, and communicate effectively. Now, just because you have dyscalculia doesn't mean you're going to struggle with all of those things per se. I have dyscalculia, and for the most part, I tend to be an excellent communicator. There are times where I do admit, like, I definitely slip up. I think that's just human nature, but yeah. Yeah, ability to solve problems. Even when it's not math related, I feel like the ability to solve problems can be a little iffy at times. However, I think I need more time to just like process it. Again, that's the thinking portion. To process it and to be able to think logically about a problem. I'm definitely not somebody who can think of how to solve a problem on a spot, and that's definitely something I've come to terms with it, come to terms in like recent years, is I'm not somebody who can just like think of how to solve a problem like on a spot, especially in a logical sense, because there's just like too much pressure on me. Because then somebody would be like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just do this, this, and this, and this? Well, I didn't have the time to actually think logically about the situation and break it down enough. And that's something really important for people with dyscalculia is we definitely need, especially when it comes to math problems, excuse me, especially when it comes to math problems, we need time to literally be able to think logically and break things down into smaller steps. And that definitely applies in real life as well. So, um, places of impact when it comes to dyscalculia is estimating quantity without counting. So again, just like the estimating of the rubber balls inside a like glass jar, there's that calculation skills. So what I do for a living is I actually help fellow adults with disabilities. And I was out with a client the other week and she asked me how much a item would be since it had a tag for being like 10% off, and the price, like original price, was like $9 and like 99 cents or whatever. And she asked me then like what would the price be since it's like 10% off. Literally couldn't tell her because I was not really taught to do those calculations. A lot of my tutoring was focused heavily on adding and subtracting for years and years and years, that I just was never taught to like do that kind of math. Um, I did when I was older a little bit, but just because like for people with disabilities, it's all about repetition, repetition, repetition. Uh, could not have told her what the sales price would be. So that's just like a real world example of that. Next thing is using processes to solve equations. Yeah, there goes that. In that same scenario, I try to pull out the calculator and do that equation Yep, I accidentally subtracted what I thought was 10% from the original price, knowing full well that's not how you figure that out. But again, because my memory is affected by my disability, that's just not there. So that's why. Let's see. Mental math. I think you can tell from that story that the mental math is not there. The only thing that I've gotten really, really good with mental math is adding, because that's been submitted or concreted in my head to do. And one of the reasons why I can do it so good is because I've memorized like touch points. And I can probably get into that in a second. So, another thing is remembering steps in a sequence. So, again, in that situation, I could not tell you how to actually figure out how to get that sales price because I didn't remember exactly how you did the calculations for that. Interesting enough, if you told me how to do, excuse me, any kind of calculation relating to business financing, could not tell you how to do any of that because I learned how to plug a lot of that stuff into Excel, and Excel did the calculations for me. I really did not read through a lot of the problems in school, and so yeah, this is making me feel like probably should not go into starting your own business, but if I do, I will figure it out, just like I always do. Another thing is reading graphs or charts. Honestly, I'm pretty good at this, and this is what I loved about going to school is because I love to read graphs and charts. I think they're really fascinating. And not just because they're pretty, if you make them really pretty, but it helps. Remembering dates and deadlines. So this is really interesting because as I've spoken to you guys about my going through like neuro evaluation, um remembering dates and deadlines for like my work is a whole different story, but remembering dates and deadlines for like things outside of work is on point. I know when I need to leave and be there for my allergy shot appointments that are really frequent. When I need to be there if I have a doctor's appointment, when I need to leave my house, when I need to go up to Williston to get there like on time, if I'm trying to make it like before dark and get there at their time since they are a hour ahead of us, and especially to make there on time really when it comes to like dinner. So yeah, for me, not much of an issue, but for other people, it's definitely an issue. Counting change. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Navigation skills. I have talked in multiple videos on how bad my navigation skills are. My mom loves to tell the story of how I was in middle school, I want to say, and I was supposed to get a haircut or something. It wasn't a haircut. I was supposed to like go pick something up at a store that was literally just straight across from the street. And she sent me to walk there because I didn't have my license at the time. And it was just across the street. And, or maybe I did have my license because I ended up on the other side of town. And my mom literally made fun of me for this. And I did not realize that this is something that is heavily a part of my disability. Is I did not understand for the longest time how the streets work in my town. And since we had the oil boom, it really screwed me up. I didn't know for the longest time that Main Street is basically the central point of the town, and then from like Main Street up to like where I was ish and beyond, that was the east side of town, and that's why all the streets were east. And then from Main Street on to like the other side of town, that was the west side of town. And so, yeah, trying to navigate streets in this town, especially when my job is to drive clients around, is so frustrating and anxiety inducing. And oh my god, you guys, the downtown, the I could curse right now. Excuse me. The downtown area. All of the like hospitals and clinics downtown are all mushed together. On Thursday, I had to drive a client to go pick up her medications. Thankfully, my supervisor gave me the address to where it's at. There's never parking downtown. I didn't know where to park. Part of the problem was my GPS led me to the wrong place. Well, it led me to the right place, but to like the wrong side of the building to park or whatever. And then it would have me turn. But the problem is, where you turn or whatever, it's a one-way street. And then people would honk at me. And the other problem was, this place was so curvy. So curvy. You would like go up to a light or whatever, or to a stop sign, and the road would naturally curve, and you could go straight, but then it would be straight and the street would curve, but then you could also go straight with the curve, or you could also go and curve and take a right with the curve. You know how friggin' confusing that is for somebody with dyscalculia? Somebody literally honked at me because of that. And I feel like I need a sign on my car that says I have a disability that plays with my ability to navigate this town. Please do not honk at me. And then have a sticker too that says my GPS does not tell me what lane I need to be in. Please hold. Or something. Like, it's bad. So that's literally how dyscalculia plays in my day-to-day life. Yeah, it's pretty bad when I am driving clients around. And then, yeah, when I have to take a company car, and that anxiety gets induced even more because I'm taking a company car, trying to navigate streets that I've never even been on. It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. So, yeah, I literally had to tell them, I'm like, here is part of my disability. I will never be able to memorize the routes that I take with clients, because I take a lot of different clients and we take a lot of different ways to get places. And so I need access to a GPS. I took my little like tripod thing out and I stuck it into one of the company cars on Thursday, and that actually helped a lot. So I'm gonna have to probably get like another one of those things and just like use it for work, because I don't want to have to take mine out like every single time. It's stressing me out, you guys. But anywho, so that's kind of what dyscalculia is. I'll see if I can do the sound here, the clip as well. Sorry, guys, I won't lie. I just took some cough medicine. I'm pretty sure it's non-drowsy, or it didn't say that on the packet, so I think it's just kicking in. Let me see if I can find it here. Shouldn't be that far up. All right, here it is. Oops. Parents and honestly even some educators aren't familiar with. I mean, so this is from the podcast, the Neurodiversity podcast. There's one thing that he says in here that I don't agree with, which is the inability to learn. And I don't agree with that because it's not our inability to learn. It's just we have an inability to like comprehend what's being taught, because oftentimes what's being taught to us is being taught in a way that we just can't comprehend. So here's them explaining what dyscalculia is in a way better way that I just explained. Education here in the US specifically, we have specific learning disabilities in the area of math is what is federally mandated under IDEA. So they may know that particular term, but really understanding what that is, what are we actually talking about when we use that term, dyscalculia? Yeah. So I think we refer to a specific learning difficulty in the domain of math, as you just articulated. We're talking about learners who are resistant to instruction, who are unable to grasp some very fundamental mathematical concepts. And I think the hallmark of dyscalculia is the inability to encode and retrieve arithmetic facts from long-term memory. It's literally in the name, dyscalculia, a disorder of calculation. But underlying that are difficulties in understanding quantities, how quantities relate to one another, and importantly as well, how quantities relate to symbols. So when you look at children who could be classified as having developmental dyscalculia, given their neuropsychological profile and given their resistance to instructional support, you will see that those children are much slower at, for example, judging which of two Arabic numerals is numerically larger compared to children without dyscalculia. But like dyslexia, of course, we do have some definitional ambiguity in the sense that there isn't a test. You can't go down to your CVS and buy a test for dyscalculia, but rather you have a school psychologist in conjunction with educators work with the child, run a set of standardized tests, determine a cutoff, and then assign the label. But I would say that, like dyslexia, dyscalculia is likely on a continuum where there isn't a neat cutoff where you say, this group of children has dyscalculia, but this group of children does not. So that's an important caveat when we talk about these specific learning difficulties in general. But I would say it's really the inability to respond to instruction, and therefore the need to identify compensatory strategies and to work, for example, in the domain of arithmetic on helping dyscalculic children develop better ways of calculating without engaging sort of a fact storage. That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that is still a term that many parents and honestly even some educators aren't familiar with. So yeah, that's basically what it is. And so my story is that I was diagnosed through the school when I was in first grade. And a little bit of a fun fact for you guys is I'm also adopted. I have a closed adoption, and specific learning disabilities are actually more common with people who are internationally adopted. So I was adopted from India, and then I came to the United States. And so, yeah, interesting enough, I have an older sister, same scenario. We were adopted at the same age, like we came to America at the same age of 2. No, we are not blood sisters. We get that question all the time. She does not have a learning disability, but I do. And so um, that's a really important distinction there. And so, yeah, so I was diagnosed in first grade. I have a very specific memory of being in kindergarten, and that's when we were learning to count in tens and fives, and the teacher would pull us back. And I was one of the last kids to really get learning to count by five specifically. I don't remember being the last one to like count by tens, but I was definitely towards the end in both situations. And so, yes, I definitely remember that. And then, yeah, by first grade, I was officially diagnosed with a specific learning disability. I actually was receiving services through the school for reading comprehension and math. And so, one of the hard things is I grew up in a predominantly white community. This is important to note because I was one of the few kids that was being pulled out of class to go do her own thing. And so, long story short, with math, I eventually became the only kid who was being pulled out of class to go work on her own math. That created a lot of trauma for me, and I did not realize that until I actually interviewed for my current job. And so, yeah. Of course, when that happens, where does a child's mind go to? It goes to, I'm stupid, and it kind of spirals out of control from there. My adopted mother, I will admit, really did fail here and did not do a good job at all. She never did not explain to me why I was being pulled out of math class and why I was being put into the dumber math classes, if you will. And so that really played with me mentally. No, I did not. I did not, excuse me, go into a depression or anything like that. I didn't have any mental health issues because of it. That's another fact is when you have a learning disability, you are at an increased risk for things like anxiety, depression, ADHD. I did recently get tested for anxiety and ADHD. As of right now, there's no bells and whistles for going off for ADHD. Even though I have inattentive ADHD tendencies, they don't think I have ADHD. We will see about that next month. Um, but I just have situational anxiety. That's really the only thing, which is just like normal anxiety that people get from time to time. And yeah, so it wasn't until middle school that I got put into classes with other kids like me, and that made me feel a lot better. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one that has this thing. Um, in elementary school, too, I was going to summer school to keep up with the ability to retain my math skills. And that was still really hard, though, um, just because that was only happening in the summer. That wasn't happening during school, you know? And so, yeah, middle school came along, and that's actually kind of when I started to feel more like normal, I guess. Um, Something that's rare with people with disabilities, learning disabilities specifically, and dyscalculia specifically, is there's an inability to play a musical instrument and to dance. Um, and I was able to do both. I was forced into band because of my mother, and I had no choice but to do band. And so that's pretty rare. Um, this is how I also was able to stay like on task and stay organized. I never had my tutors growing up from like middle school on to remind me to like get work done, get things turned in on time. I really was a rare case, you guys, and I'm as an adult, like it's proving more and more that I'm a really rare case in this situation. And so, yeah, because along with just having an inability to like do this math stuff, um, it falls into like ADHD tendencies, like I said, of not really being able to stay organized, meet deadlines, and that kind of stuff, where I didn't have any of those issues growing up. And so, yeah, the ability to not dance is a huge issue for people with dyscalculia as well. That's because remembering a sequence of steps, it's that muscle memory. And because I actually got diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was like 5 or 6, and I was dancing when I was 3. Um, that completely like missed. So that's really interesting, and it's interesting now because of muscle memory. I still have quite a few of the dances that I've done like memorized in my head because I can hear the music and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Like it's just this weird thing of like hearing the music. And even when I choreograph my own stuff, I hear the music in a very specific way, and then my body just like knows what to do. I can't explain. But yeah. Um Another really rare thing I will say for people with dyscalculia and just kind of learning disabilities in general is behavioral issues. A lot of times, behavioral issues come up with having a learning disability, not just dyscalculia, but any learning disability. And I never had that in school. Now, at home, I fought like hell with my mom. There was definitely tears shed when doing homework. And so that was definitely something that occurred. But at school, I never had any kind of behavioral issues at all. Now, other kids that I was around probably had some other stuff going around, and that's completely okay. But I did not have that whatsoever. I was a completely normal kid for the most part, and it's really weird because people actually will tell me that they viewed me as a popular kid in high school, which I hate because of just the stigma and stuff that goes with being called popular. Um, I like to say I was well known in high school because of everything I did in high school, which was, band and theater. And so, yeah, and that's that. So, um, yeah, definitely see more of struggles coming out now in my adult life with dyscalculia. I will say I definitely notice more when it's coming out of like, oh, yep, I can't really do that because that's part of my disability. And I'll advocate for myself a lot more now. And I'll over explain things, which is to each their own. And yeah, I'm trying to think like what else I really struggle with. The main like non-math related thing is the whole navigation thing is what I really can't do right now. North, south, east, west, I don't get it. I never understood it. I yeah. Um what's another thing I don't understand? Oh, I don't can I say this? Yeah. I worked in a few jobs that have billable hours. And so trying to figure that out and trying to figure out like if I do this much for this client or whatever, just the math within that really throws me off. So I always have to like work with my supervisors to make sure that like I'm hitting the marks, so to speak, when it comes to billable hours. And yeah, um, one of the best things right now is, like I said, I do work with other adults with disabilities. And as I'm going through my journey right now, I have amazing support from both of my supervisors. And I've told them about going through neurological testing to get this like officially tested. I got other videos explaining the whole thing if you want to check it out. And the one said in an email just, I think earlier this week, saying, if you have any questions about it, like, please do not hesitate to ask us about it. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much because I will definitely have questions about it. I don't know how different it is like here in Montana versus in North Dakota. Like, yeah. So the support that I've gotten for both of them has just been amazing, and it's definitely not going unrecognized at all. And so, yeah, I'm very, very, very like privileged in that way, and I'm not recognizing that, you know? So, yeah, and it's just so interesting. I obviously can't talk a lot about like the specifics about what I do and whatever, but it's very interesting to be in my position. And it's definitely challenging because I never want to come off as condescending in any way to my coworkers, especially being like, well, I have a disability and I know more than you do just because I have this disability. Like, no, I never want to come off like that. However, having a disability and working with people with disabilities does allow me to bring a really unique perspective to it. Just because I can think a little bit more logical in a lot of sense, in a lot of senses, where sometimes they might not be able to. Because I know a lot of times, I guess I can say this, a lot of times their behaviors, there's a reason for that. And so I'm like, okay, if we're having a pattern of behaviors, why is that? What's going on here? Especially if it's happening to multiple people. Why is that? Instead of trying to get too much into the emotions or whatever. Um, I'm able to like logically break that down and see why is this happening. One tip that I'm going through right now, I'm going to take a sip of water and then I'm going to wrap this up. One thing like I'm working on now is I have a client who's really struggling with like time management. I have quite a few. Well, I got like two that are working on like time management stuff. And so I just did this yesterday. I gotta make sure the name stays out of sight. But this is what I'm doing for this client is to make sure that we're not doing anything or overloading outside of our time together. I'm offering a visual for that client. And so I got a printable, and I got, when I'm with that client, really try not to show a name, how much time we have together, and I broke it down. So when I arrive, when I need to be done by, how much time we have together, and I actually have a visual. Because what I've learned is a lot of times people will just kind of preach to them, and a lot of people with cognitive disabilities will be like, yep, we understand, but really it's not actually clicking up here. And I do this a lot too with my own disability when it comes to math related things. And so I think it's really vital that we are giving visuals to what we are saying, because I'm a firm believer, especially for cognitive disabilities, that we are seeing things, we are hearing things, and when it comes to like the learning process, at least when you're trying to like teach us something, that we're hearing it, we're seeing it, we're actually doing it like hands on. So, um, with this thing specifically, I want her to be able to hear me like auditory. I want her to see it. And then I want us to kind of practice like doing it and stuff. So I got a few ways to hopefully help manage it a little bit better while also trying to obviously improve um, that time management. So, with that said, I kind of hope this clears it up. I have multiple videos of dyscalculia on my channel. If you guys want to check that out, they explain it a little bit better. Um, and so, yeah, if you guys like this video, I know it's super long. Be sure to like it, hit subscribe down below, hit the bell for notifications. I post every single weekend. I have my neuro evaluation actually a month away from tomorrow. And so I will I will let you guys know how that all goes, what the process is like. I will definitely be talking to my supervisor about, what we're looking at, how this goes down, because they know as um, they um, probably can't even say it, but yeah, they just know. And so I will keep you guys posted on all of that. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, be sure to leave it down in the comments. So dyscalculia is a cognitive disability, and it affects the way you think, process information, the memory, and how you communicate. And learning disabilities cannot be cured. They are a lifetime disability, okay? So that is what I want you to take away from this video. And I hope you are all doing well. And I feel like my energy's off, but like I said, it's either allergies or a cold brewing. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you guys take care if you're in the States. Hope you had a wonderful 4th of July. And yeah. So with that said, I'll see you all later. Take care. Bye.